41. The Soothsayer.
This is yet another crucial chapter, another turning point. There's a lot happening here, and some of it is quite cryptic. We shall read it carefully, and try to figure out what is going on.
And I saw a great sadness come over mankind. The best turned weary of their works. A doctrine appeared, a faith ran beside it. All is empty, all is alike, all hath been. And from all hills there re-echoed, all is empty, all is alike, all hath been.
The chapter opens with a quote. We don't know who is quoted, but it sounds a lot like Ecclesiastes, saying, "Vanity of vanities, all is vanity." Except that it is delivered in the form of a prophecy, a vision of the future. It prophesies that humans will despair of life when they will realize that there is nothing new under the sun, and that humanity, despite the promises of modernity, isn't progressing anywhere.
To be sure we have harvested, but why have all our fruits become rotten and brown? What was it fell last night from the evil moon? In vain was all our labour, poison hath our wine become, the evil eye hath singed yellow our fields and hearts. Arid have we all become, and fire falling upon us. Then do we turn dust like ashes, yea, the fire itself have we made aweary.
Everything that man does, and is good for a while, eventually turns rotten. Even man himself eventually dies and rots. What, then, is the point of doing anything, or even living? This is what the people of the future will ask themselves.
All our fountains have dried up, even the sea hath receded, all the ground trieth to gape, but the depth will not swallow. Alas, where is there still a sea in which one could be drowned? So soundeth our plaint, across shallow swamps. Verily, even for dying have we become too weary. Now do we keep awake and live on, in sepulchres.
It will become so bad that people would rather die, and will look for great causes to die for, but will realize that there are none left. They will become the living dead, carrying on living, but feeling dead inside. This is what future life will become, according to the speaker, and it flies in the face of the kind of life that Zarathustra is trying to create. Who is it that is thus speaking? Who is blaspheming against earthly life?
Thus did Zarathustra hear a soothsayer speak, and the foreboding touched his heart and transformed him. Sorrowfully did he go about and wearily, and he became like unto those of whom the soothsayer had spoken. Verily, said he unto his disciples, a little while, and there cometh the long twilight. Alas, how shall I preserve my light through it? That it may not smother in this sorrowfulness. To remoter worlds shall it be a light, and also to remotest nights.
Finally, it is revealed that the speaker is a soothsayer, whom Zarathustra hears preaching. We expect him to immediately refute these blasphemous words. Alas, Zarathustra is deeply afflicted. He actually never dealt with this argument against earthly life before. Still, if life is as good as he claims, it is hard to see why the realization that everything returns should be so upsetting. But Zarathustra senses that it presents a big problem for him, one that will make him sink into the pits of meaninglessness and despair. What is that problem?
Thus did Zarathustra go about grieved in his heart, and for 3 days he did not take any meat or drink. He had no rest, and lost his speech. At last it came to pass that he fell into a deep sleep. His disciples, however, sat around him in long night watches, and waited anxiously to see if he would awake, and speak again, and recover from his affliction. And this is the discourse that Zarathustra spake when he awoke. His voice, however, came unto his disciples as from afar. Hear, I pray you, the dream that I dreamed, my friends, and help me to divine its meaning. A riddle is it still unto me, this dream. The meaning is hidden in it and encaged, and doth not yet fly above it on free pinions.
From here on, this is going to be a big part of the book. Zarathustra will be plagued with bad thoughts, but will be unable to articulate exactly what the problem is. It all happens on the subconscious level, and will be revealed through dreams, visions, and premonitions. As dreams do, however, they will speak in metaphors, and he will have to try to decipher what they are telling him. And even when he will achieve insights, he will hide it in other metaphors, leaving it to us to interpret the dreams on our own. Here, we also have his disciples to help us.
All life had I renounced, so I dreamed. Night watchman and grave guardian had I become, aloft in the lone mountain fortress of death. There did I guard his coffins. Full stood the musty vaults of those trophies of victory. Out of glass coffins did vanquished life gaze upon me. The odour of dust-covered eternities did I breathe. Sultry and dust-covered lay my soul, and who could have aired his soul there? Brightness of midnight was ever around me, lonesomeness cowered beside her, and as a third, death rattles stillness, the worst of my female friends.
In his dream, Zarathustra found himself in the reality that the Soothsayer prophesied, a reality in which everything is dead. All the things that man has created, all the ideas and inventions that he came up with, and which were once vital and vivacious, have all ended in tombs, and everything that exists now is just copies of them. The dream casts him in the role of the guardian of these tombs, up on Death's mountain. His only friends there were loneliness, stillness, and what he calls the brightness of midnight. This is an ironic term. In Zarathustra's symbolism, midnight is the time of the greatest darkness, when he can no longer see anything clearly.
Keys did I carry, the rustiest of all keys, and I knew how to open with them the most creaking of all gates. Like a bitterly angry croaking ran the sound through the long corridors when the leaves of the gate opened. Ungraciously did this bird cry, unwillingly was it awakened. But more frightful even, and more heart-strangling was it, when it again became silent and still all around, and I alone sat in that malignant silence.
Even in this dream, Zarathustra is still trying to figure out the secrets of life, and this is represented by the keys he carries. But every door he opens only leads to more death and rot. The Gothic imagery of this dream is truly depressing and horrifying.
Thus did time pass with me and slip by, if time there still was. What do I know thereof? But at last there happened that which awoke me. Thrice did there peal peals at the gate like thunders. Thrice did the vaults resound and howl again. Then did I go to the gate. "Alpa," cried I, "who carrieth his ashes unto the mountain? Alpa, Alpa, who carrieth his ashes unto the mountain?"
Finally, he gets a visitor. Someone knocks at the door, and Zarathustra's response is somewhat cryptic. The name Alpa doesn't appear anywhere else in Nietzsche's work. But the part about carrying ashes onto the mountain is something we have heard before. In The Way of the Creating One, he told us that in order to become new, you must first burn your old self and become ashes. And in Backwards Man, he told us that he carried his ashes to the mountains, where he surpassed himself. To achieve self-surpassing, then, one must first burn like the phoenix, then carry their ashes up to the mountain, and come down from the mountain renewed. The mountain is a metaphor for spiritual struggle, so self-surpassing comes from a struggle to achieve new spiritual heights, a struggle in which you also burn your old self to ashes, but keep on carrying those ashes with you, as they become part of your new self. In the dream, he encounters someone else who is apparently undergoing self-surpassing, and is now knocking on his door. Does this mean that someone has actually come up with a new idea that isn't dead like the rest?
And I pressed the key and pulled at the gate, and exerted myself, but not a finger's breadth was it yet open. Then did a roaring wind tear the folds apart, whistling, whizzing, and piercing. It threw unto me a black coffin. And in the roaring and whistling and whizzing the coffin burst up and spouted out 1,000 peals of laughter, and 1,000 caricatures of children, angels, owls, fools, and child-sized butterflies laughed and mocked and roared at me. Fearfully was I terrified thereby. It prostrated me, and I cried with horror as I ne'er cried before. But mine own crying awoke me, and I came to myself.
Nietzsche is good, isn't he? The imagery here is incredibly dark, but also very vivid. His visitor is a coffin, but this coffin is driven by what's inside, which brings the dead place to life and fills it with merriment. This scares him, as he was never scared before, and is the thing that woke him up from the dream.
Thus did Zarathustra relate his dream, and then was silent, for as yet he knew not the interpretation thereof. But the disciple whom he loved most arose quickly, seized Zarathustra's hand, and said, Thy life itself interpreteth unto us this dream, O Zarathustra. Art thou not thyself the wind with shrill whistling, which bursteth open the gates of the fortress of death? Art thou not thyself the coffin full of many-hued malices and angel caricatures of life? Verily, like 1,000 peals of children's laughter cometh Zarathustra into all sepulchres, laughing at those night watchmen and grave guardians, and whoever else rattleth with sinister keys.
The disciple interprets the dream for him. Humankind was heading towards spiritual death before Zarathustra's arrival, and this death is what is symbolized in the place he dreamt. But then Zarathustra came in and filled the spirit with life-affirming ideas, charging it with energy, merriment, and mischief. The caricatures of angels that appeared in his dream are his own reinterpretations of religious spiritual ideas into earthly spiritual ideas. He was the coffin of laughter that drove death away, and brought us back to life.
With thy laughter wilt thou frighten and prostrate them, fainting and recovering will demonstrate thy power over them. And when the long twilight cometh, and the mortal weariness, even then wilt thou not disappear from our firmament, thou advocate of life. New stars hast thou made us see, and new nocturnal glories. Verily, laughter itself hast thou spread out over us like a many-hued canopy. Now will children's laughter ever from coffins flow. Now will a strong wind ever come victoriously unto all mortal weariness. Of this thou art thyself the pledge and the prophet.
Of course, there are only a few who understand Zarathustra's message, who have been revived by him. The rest of humankind still wallows in the ideas created by the preachers of death. This means that humanity will continue to decay, in what the disciple calls the long twilight. But Zarathustra's ideas will forever be there as an antidote, and this is why life will not be vanquished, and will eventually win.
Verily, they themselves didst thou dream, thine enemies. That was thy sorest dream. But as thou awokest from them and camest to thyself, so shall they awaken from themselves, and come unto thee. Thus spake the disciple, and all the others then thronged around Zarathustra, grasped him by the hands, and tried to persuade him to leave his bed and his sadness, and return unto them. Zarathustra, however, sat upright on his couch, with an absent look. Like one returning from long foreign sojourn, did he look on his disciples, and examine their features, but still he knew them not.
The disciple interprets that Zarathustra was casting himself in the role of his enemies, and the fear that he felt was the fear that they feel when encountered by his life-affirming philosophy. Actually, it seems that Zarathustra still hasn't fully woken up, and is still in the identity he had in the dream, because he doesn't recognize his disciples. But the dream also prophesies that one day they will wake up and realize the error of their ways, and then Zarathustra's ideas will be there to save them.
When, however, they raised him and set him upon his feet, behold, all on a sudden his eye changed. He understood everything that had happened, stroked his beard, and said with a strong voice, Well, this hath just its time. But see to it, my disciples, that we have a good repast, and without delay. Thus do I mean to make amends for bad dreams. The soothsayer, however, shall eat and drink at my side, and verily I will yet show him a sea in which he can drown himself. Thus spake Zarathustra. Then did he gaze long into the face of the disciple who had been the dream interpreter, and shook his head.
When he finally comes back to his senses, Zarathustra seems to accept the interpretation of the disciple. He is revived, and now he believes that he will get even the soothsayer on his side. But should we, the readers, be satisfied? The interpretation leaves out some things. Most of all, it leaves out the key part about the self-surpassing. Here is how I interpret it. Zarathustra's dream is not casting him in the role of his enemies, but of his future self. His own ideas will die for him, and will no longer bring him joy. And the coffin is a new idea he will come up with, an idea that will scare him, but will also make him undergo self-surpassing and bring him back to life. By the time he conquers the mountain and comes up with this new idea, however, he will be in a spiritual coffin, and only the self-surpassing will allow him to break out.